What if everything you've ever been told about getting clear skin is, well, just a lie?
Or at least a very carefully designed misdirection.
Right. A misdirection designed to sell you expensive, completely useless chemicals.
Yeah, and what if the real cure for, chronic acne or relentless dandruff isn't found in a pharmacy aisle at all?
But at the butcher shop, welcome to the deep dive.
You're glad to be here for this one.
And if you're listening to this, I know you. You're the kind of person who doesn't just accept conventional wisdom at face value.
You like to strip things down to the studs, look at the actual architecture of a problem.
Exactly. So today, we have a mission that is going to test exactly how willing you are to completely abandon a fundamental assumption about how your own body works.
It really does require a massive cognitive shift. We're unpacking a highly viral 10-minute video script targeted primarily at teenagers and 20-somethings.
And the core thesis of this video is that modern dermatology, so the medicated washes, the salicylic acid serums, the specialized antifungal shampoos, is basically a structural failure.
Right. The author argues that the only permanent resolution to these chronic skin conditions is a radical dietary intervention.
Specifically shifting to high natural fats and animal proteins.
Which sounds completely backwards to most people.
It really does. But right out of the gate, we need to lay down the absolute ground rules for this discussion.
Yes, very important.
Neither of us are medical doctors. We are not dietitians. We are not prescribing this protocol to you.
And we certainly aren't telling anyone to, toss their prescription medications in the trash based on a YouTube video.
Definitely not. Our role today is strictly analytical. We're going to impartially dissect the biological claims, the rhetorical strategies, and the underlying logic this creator uses.
Because they really do build a genuinely fascinating case.
They do. And setting the medical debate aside, I think the most compelling aspect of this framework isn't just the menu it prescribes.
No, it's the philosophical reframing of the human body.
Yeah, this worldview demands that we stop viewing the skin as...
Instead, it asks us to view the epidermis merely as a diagnostic monitor.
Right. Like if you have a system error deep inside your computer's motherboard, you don't try to fix it by scrubbing the glass of your computer monitor.
Exactly. But structurally, that is exactly how we treat the skin.
Okay, let's unpack this. The monitor displaying a system error, that's the perfect entry point. Because the creator starts this essay by tapping into a very specific, agonizing psychological state.
Oh yeah, they go right for the emotional core.
If you've ever stood in front of a bathroom mirror at 2 in the morning, anxiously picking at painful inflammation.
Or if you've ever done that paranoid shoulder brush to check for flakes before walking into a room.
You know the exhaustion. You buy the premium product, it burns your face or strips your scalp. You get, what, 3 days of relief?
If you're lucky.
Right, and then the problem just roars back.
It's a cycle of false hope. And the author leverages that shared trauma immediately with a brilliant, visceral analogy.
The moldy wall paradigm.
Yes, exactly. They argue that applying topical creams to chronic acne is functionally identical to painting over a mold-infested drywall.
It makes so much sense when you hear it like that.
You can buy the most expensive, highly rated antimicrobial paint on the market. You can apply it flawlessly.
And the wall looks pristine for a week.
But the moisture is still trapped inside the architecture of the house. The environment that birthed the mold hasn't changed an iota.
So inevitably, the black spores just push right back through that expensive new coat of paint.
Precisely.
I understand the rhetorical power of that image, but my immediate pushback when I was reviewing this was about basic hygiene.
Sure.
There is a baseline assumption in our society that we need exogenous interventions, soaps, cleansers, exfoliants, to manage the dirt and oil we accumulate just by existing in the world.
Right. Getting sweaty, walking through a city.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So doesn't completely abandoning surface-level care ignore the reality that our skin interacts with an external dirty environment?
That is the exact friction the author is deliberately playing with. They are attempting to shatter what we could call the exogenous mindset.
The idea that the outside is the problem.
Right. The ingrained belief that because a symptom manifests externally, its solution must be applied externally.
I see.
To address your point on hygiene, a framework here doesn't suggest you stop showering.
Good to know.
Yeah, it suggests that chronic systemic inflammation like cystic acne or severe seborrheic dermatitis isn't caused by a lack of surface hygiene. Conflating the two is the major error we all make.
It's like we're standing in our living room holding an umbrella because it's raining, completely ignoring the fact that we're indoors and we accidentally left the fire sprinkler system running.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
The umbrella, which is the skincare routine, might technically keep our heads dry for a minute,
Right?
but it is an absurd, inappropriate tool for the actual crisis.
Yeah.
We control the faucet, we just refuse to look at the plumbing.
Precisely. And by opening with the moldy wall analogy, the creator is doing vital psychological lifting.
They're validating the audience's failure.
Exactly. They are saying, look, the reason you haven't cured your skin isn't because you aren't washing your face enough or because you bought the wrong brand.
It's because the entire paradigm of topical treatment is scientifically mismatched to the root cause.
Yes. Once you accept that the paint isn't the problem, you're finally ready to look inside the wall.
So let's rip open the drywall. If the creams are just paint, what is the moisture?
What's feeding the mold?
Right. What is the indoor sprinkler system flooding the house? This brings us to the biological villain of the essay.
And the author does not mince words here.
No, they point the finger squarely at the foundational staples of the modern, ultra-processed diet.
They isolate three primary culprits, specifically liquid fructose, refined flour, and factory-refined plant seed oils.
Let's pause on that list because it's
Okay.
very specific. Here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, they aren't just generally waving a hand at junk food.
They are targeting the highly refined, easily digestible carbohydrates and industrial fats that don't just exist in candy.
They form the baseline of everyday convenience foods.
And the logic here rests on a very specific biological domino effect. The moment you ingest these specific processed materials, you aren't just digesting calories.
No, you are initiating a vertical spike in blood glucose.
And it's the velocity of that spike that matters, right?
Absolutely. Human biology, from an evolutionary standpoint, is designed to handle slow, steady releases of glucose.
Like from chewing a complex root vegetable.
Or a piece of whole fruit wrapped in fibrous tissue. But when you drink liquid fructose or eat pulverized, refined flour, there is no mechanical breakdown required.
It floods the bloodstream instantly.
And the body interprets a massive, sudden spike in blood sugar not as nourishment, but as an acute metabolic crisis.
Because blood sugar operates on an incredibly tight physiological tolerance.
Right. If it stays elevated, it's highly toxic to our blood vessels and organs.
So the body hits the panic button.
It initiates a massive compensatory response. The pancreas is forced to dump an unnatural, excessive surge of a hormone called insulin into the system.
And insulin's job is essentially to act as a bouncer, right?
That's a good way to look at it.
Forcing that toxic excess glucose out of the bloodstream and shoving it into the cells.
Exactly. But the cascade doesn't stop with insulin.
This is where the essay introduces a secondary hormone that rarely gets talked about in standard skincare conversations.
The insulin flood triggers a subsequent spike in a hormone called IGF-1.
Insulin-like growth factor 1.
Yes. And IGF-1 is a fascinating molecule. In its proper context during puberty or when recovering from an injury, it's essential.
It signals cells to grow, to multiply, to build tissue.
But when it is chronically spiked day after day by a relentless diet of refined carbohydrates, it acts like a blaring systemic red alert siren.
You are commanding your body to wildly overproduce cells and tissue in an environment that just doesn't need them.
Which perfectly dismantles one of the most persistent, frustrating myths in the entire culture of skincare.
And the creator takes a very deliberate detour here to address it, which I loved.
The detox myth.
We've all heard the folklore. Someone eats a greasy, sugary fast food meal, they break out 2 days later, and the cultural consensus is,
Oh, your body is just detoxing. You're sweating out the poisons from the junk food.
it's a comforting lie, isn't it?
Very comforting. The concept of a detox implies that the body is intelligently identifying a toxin, packaging it up into a neat little pustule, and safely exporting it out through the skin.
It frames the acne as a successful, if annoying, biological victory.
Exactly. It frames the breakout as a feature, not a bug.
But this framework aggressively corrects that. The author argues that a pimple is absolutely not a little packet of successfully expelled poison.
Not at all. What you are witnessing on your face is a localized system crash.
It is the visible evidence of overwhelming internal inflammation. The body isn't intelligently detoxing.
It's suffocating under the weight of metabolic chaos.
It's a crucial distinction. Because if you believe your skin is detoxing, you might just wait it out, assuming the process will eventually finish.
Right, you just write it out. But if you realize your skin is highly inflamed because your hormones are actively short-circuiting, it demands a much more urgent systemic intervention.
So let's track the sequence so far. You consume the flour and the liquid fructose.
The blood sugar goes vertical.
The pancreas panics and unleashes the insulin flood.
The IGF-1 siren starts screaming, commanding rampant cellular growth.
We have systemic inflammation. But how do we bridge the gap?
What do you mean?
How does this abstract hormonal storm happening in our liver and pancreas physically translate to a cystic pimple on your jawline or white flakes accumulating on your scalp?
That requires zooming in from the macrohormonal level down to the microscopic real estate of the skin itself.
Specifically, the sebaceous glands.
Right. These are the tiny factories located inside our pores that produce sebum, our natural skin oil.
And under normal conditions, sebum is great. It waterproofs us, it protects us.
It's essential.
But the essay argues that these sebaceous glands are highly, highly sensitive to insulin and IGF-1.
Extremely sensitive. When those hormones spike, the glands don't just produce a little extra moisture.
They essentially lose their minds.
The hormonal surge hyperstimulates them. They shift from a state of normal maintenance into a state of frantic overproduction.
The visualization here is intense. I was picturing a well-regulated oil refinery that suddenly gets hacked and forced to run at 400% capacity with all the safety valves welded shut.
That is exactly what is happening. And the consistency of the oil changes, too.
Right. The creator suggests that instead of a thin, protective fluid, these panicked glands start churning out a thick, sticky, highly comedogenic crude oil.
It is so viscous and produced in such massive quantities that it physically cannot escape the narrow exit pathway of the pore.
It instantly creates a bottleneck.
And that bottleneck, that clogged, oxygen-deprived pore packed with sticky lipids, creates an entirely new, highly specialized microenvironment.
And this is where the actual biological villains of the piece enter the stage.
Right, the microbes.
The essay specifically isolates two actors: Cutibacterium acnes, the bacteria associated with acne, and Malassezia, the yeast-like fungus that drives dandruff and seborrheic dermatitis.
Now, what's vital to understand here is that under normal circumstances, these microbes are not invaders.
You cannot catch them from someone else.
No, they are indigenous to the human skin flora. They live on all of us right now in a balanced state of homeostasis.
But they are lipophilic, right? They eat lipids, they feed on sebum.
Exactly. So when the insulin spikes and the crude oil floods the pore, we aren't just clogging the system.
We are suddenly catering an all-you-can-eat five-star buffet for these specific microbes.
If we connect this to the bigger picture and apply an evolutionary lens to this, as the author subtly does, the bacteria and fungi are just executing their biological imperative.
They are opportunistic.
We have radically altered their environment by providing an infinite food source so their populations explode.
Makes total sense.
And as they gorge on this excessive altered sebum, they produce inflammatory byproducts like free fatty acids, which irritate the surrounding skin tissue even further.
The essay uses an incredibly evocative metaphor to tie this all together. It describes the inflamed body as a house on fire.
Yes.
And by continuing to consume the ultra-processed diet, the sodas, the breads, the seed oils, you're essentially gathering armfuls of dry kindling and throwing them directly into the flames.
And the sheer absurdity of the modern skincare routine is that we are aggressively feeding the fire from the inside,
while standing on the outside spraying the house with a tiny bottle of expensive water.
wondering why it's not going out.
It renders the entire concept of topical treatment logically impotent.
You cannot exterminate a bacterial population if you are perpetually supplying them with infinite resources.
A strong medicated wash might temporarily annihilate the microbes on the uppermost layer of the epidermis.
It might reduce the redness for 24 hours.
But it does absolute zero to communicate with the pancreas.
It doesn't halt the insulin.
Which means it doesn't slow the oil production.
Which means the moment the chemical dissipates, the remaining microbes will simply feast and recolonize the pore.
The linearity of this argument is brutal. The processed carbohydrates spike the glucose.
The glucose triggers the insulin.
The insulin forces the crude oil production.
The crude oil feeds the fungi and bacteria.
The bacteria cause the visible inflammation.
If you accept that chain of causality, there is only one rational point of intervention.
You cannot fight it at the end of the chain. You have to cut the power to the factory at the source.
You must remove the metabolic trigger.
Right. But this is the exact moment where the creator pivots and things get highly controversial.
Because if the logical conclusion is change your diet to heal your skin, the standard cultural expectation is a shift toward a plant-based, low-fat, high antioxidant model.
Drink green juice, eat raw salads, avoid greasy foods.
But the prescription in this essay completely detonates that expectation.
It advocates for an intervention that is entirely antithetical to the dietary guidelines of the last 50 years.
To put it mildly.
The creator argues that to achieve hormonal peace and shut down the overproduction of sebum, you need to transition to what they term real food from nature.
Which they explicitly define as a strict low-carb, high-fat protocol.
We are talking about building a diet almost exclusively around dense animal proteins and heavy natural fats.
It's leaning heavily into a ketogenic or perhaps a slightly modulated carnivore framework.
Utilizing it not just for weight loss, but as a highly targeted dermatological therapy.
Exactly.
And let me just say, as a listener trying to internalize this, the friction here is massive.
Oh, absolutely.
Put yourself in the headspace of the target demographic.
Wow.
You are a 19-year-old. Your forehead is an oil slick.
Your scalp is itchy and flaking. Your pores feel congested 204/7.
And this video instructs you that the ultimate cure for your greasy, oily skin is to walk into the kitchen and eat a massive plate of fat and grease.
It sounds like a cruel joke.
Culturally, we are so deeply conditioned to believe that you are what you eat in the most literal, rudimentary sense.
We assume that if we eat dietary fat, it will simply migrate through our bloodstream and squeeze out of our pores.
It's an incredibly sticky cognitive bias.
We see the grease on the bacon, we see the grease on our forehead, and our brains instantly draw a causal arrow between the two.
But the author's argument relies on breaking that false association by getting into the actual biochemistry of these foods.
They aren't just throwing a stake at the problem, they assign very specific, almost pharmacological mechanisms to these high-fat, high-protein categories.
Okay, let's unpack this menu because it is hyper-specific.
The author starts with natural fats, expressly listing wild-caught salmon, avocados, virgin coconut oil, and extra virgin olive oil.
And the physiological argument here is twofold, right?
Yes. First, the skin's barrier function, the stratum corneum, is literally constructed from lipids.
It requires a robust supply of high-quality dietary fats to maintain its structural integrity and keep environmental pathogens out.
Second, these specific fat profiles are deeply anti-inflammatory.
Instead of stoking the systemic fire like refined seed oils do, these fats act systemically to calm the immune response,
Reducing the angry red inflammation of the acne and soothing the agonizing histaminic itch of the dandruff.
So the fats aren't clogging the pores. They're acting as a structural repair crew and an internal fire retardant.
Exactly. Next, the protocol mandates a heavy reliance on animal meats, beef, pork, chicken, lamb.
The creator points out that these aren't just protein sources. They're incredibly dense matrices of bioavailable micronutrients.
They highlight zinc specifically, which plays a massive role in regulating cellular turnover and immune function in the skin.
The metaphor used here is brilliant. The essay frames these amino acids and minerals as perfect building materials.
Right, because if you have suffered from severe cystic acne, you don't just have an active infection, you have physical tissue damage.
You have microscopic craters in your skin that need to be rebuilt.
And the logic is that a bowl of refined oat cereal, no matter how many synthetic vitamins are sprayed on it, cannot provide the raw architectural bricks and mortar required to synthesize new collagen and rebuild smooth, healthy tissue.
But the complex amino acid profile of a ribeye steak can.
It's viewing nutrition through the lens of cellular engineering. You must supply the precise raw materials the machinery requires to execute repairs.
But the most provocative, borderline radical assertion in this entire thesis is found in their stance on dairy and eggs.
Oh, this is the part that genuinely made me stop the video and rewind.
Same. The protocol aggressively champions the consumption of natural, full-fat, pasture-raised cheese, heavy butter, and whole eggs.
With a massive emphasis on the yolks.
And the biological justification the creator anchors this to is vitamin A.
The text asserts that the highly bioavailable preformed vitamin A retinol found in these specific animal fats functions inside the body as the natural version of isotretinoin.
For anyone fortunate enough to be unfamiliar with that generic name, isotretinoin is Accutane.
It is the absolute, undisputed nuclear option of modern dermatology.
It's a heavily regulated, prescription-only synthetic retinoid that doctors only deploy when a patient has severe, scarring, cystic acne that has resisted every antibiotic and topical treatment on the market.
It permanently shrinks the sebaceous glands.
It works, but the side effects can be brutal. Cracked lips, joint pain, extreme dryness, mood alterations.
It's a sledgehammer. But the author's thesis here is profound.
They are suggesting that by consuming substantial quantities of natural, bioavailable vitamin A from evolutionarily appropriate sources like pasture-raised egg yolks and butter, you can essentially trigger a similar, albeit gentler and more natural, mechanism of action.
You can normalize the hyperkeratinization process.
Which is a fancy way of saying you can stop the skin cells from piling up, dying rapidly, and trapping the oil.
You can regulate the cell cycle from the inside, preventing the microcomedones from forming.
And completely shutting down the rapid shedding of scalp skin that we call dandruff.
The audacity of that claim is staggering.
They are literally telling this young, desperate audience, do not go to the pharmacist for a synthetic, side effect-laden sledgehammer.
Go to the farmer's market, buy a dozen pasture-raised eggs, and eat the yolks.
It totally upends the conventional wisdom. It's a sweeping declaration that dietary fat is entirely innocent in the etiology of oily skin.
The grease on your face isn't from the fat in the pork belly.
Which brings us to the concept of the perfect illusion.
Right. This raises an important question about how we associate foods. The creator explains that we've all been falling for a trick of association.
When you eat a classic fast food meal, you are eating a massive amount of fat, yes.
But the true villain hiding in plain sight isn't the fatty patty.
It's the bun made of pulverized flour and the 32 ounces of liquid high-fructose corn syrup you are drinking alongside it.
This relies entirely on the principle of homeostasis and blood sugar stability.
You consume a meal that is virtually devoid of refined carbohydrates, say a steak cooked in butter with some avocado. Your blood glucose trajectory is essentially a flat line.
There is no rapid influx of sugar.
And if there is no glucose spike,
then there is absolutely no need for the pancreas to panic. It trickles out a baseline level of insulin.
Because there is no insulin surge, the sebaceous glands are never subjected to that hormonal hyperstimulation.
As the creator eloquently phrases it, the glands finally find peace.
They downregulate. They return to their evolutionary baseline, producing a light, thin, manageable layer of protective sebum.
The crude oil stops flowing, the Malassezia and the acne bacteria are immediately subjected to a famine.
And without their food source, their populations naturally recede to normal levels.
The excessive cell shedding on the scalp ceases, and the dandruff, according to the text, simply vanishes as if washed away from within.
So what does this all mean? If this framework is scientifically sound, it forces a deeply uncomfortable reckoning.
Because it doesn't just offer a biological hack, it veers directly into a massive systemic critique of the multi-billion-dollar cosmetic and pharmaceutical industries.
The creator doesn't shy away from this. They look right at the camera and explicitly state, Big Skincare does not want you to understand this mechanism.
It introduces a highly compelling profit motive for maintaining the status quo.
Absolutely. The argument is that the entire economic model of the skincare industry requires the consumer to remain entirely ignorant of their own internal biology.
The industry needs you trapped in that painting over the mold cycle.
Because, think about it, if a teenager realizes they can achieve permanently clear skin by stabilizing their blood sugar with steak and eggs, they are permanently exiting the skincare consumer demographic.
The cosmetic conglomerates need you to believe that your skin is inherently flawed.
That your genetics are just bad.
So that you feel compelled to purchase their proprietary foam cleansers, their chemical exfoliants, and their specialized zinc pyrithione shampoos every single month for the rest of your natural life.
A cured patient is a lost customer.
It's a deeply resonant narrative, particularly for an audience that has likely already spent hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on over-the-counter and prescription products that ultimately failed them.
The creator is offering them absolution.
They are saying, your acne is not a moral failing, your dandruff isn't because you are dirty.
You haven't failed. You've been deliberately misled by a system that profits off your continuous manageable suffering.
And the creator doesn't just leave this as some abstract, philosophical, anti-capitalist theory.
No, they translate this entire biological and economic thesis into a highly specific, aggressively actionable challenge to end the essay.
They issue a 14-day intervention.
The 2-week challenge.
It's a classic, exceptionally effective rhetorical mechanism in digital health spaces.
The parameters are stark. For exactly 14 days, 0 processed foods. No soda, no bread, no pasta, no industrial seed oils.
You replace those entirely with satiating animal proteins, natural fats, and eggs.
And the creator makes this brilliant financial pivot. They say, take the $75 you're going to spend at the dermatologist's office for a 5-minute consultation.
Or the money you're about to drop at Sephora on a new miracle serum.
And walk into a local butcher shop. Invest that money in the highest quality cut of beef you can afford. and buy some high-quality grass-fed butter.
You should really analyze the psychology of that specific time frame. Why exactly 2 weeks?
It's a very calculated balance between psychological friction and biological reality, isn't it?
Because if they said eat this way forever, people would immediately click away.
Precisely. Telling a 19-year-old to permanently abandon pizza and soda is a non-starter.
The brain instantly generates resistance. What about my birthday? What about going out with friends?
But 14 days. Anyone can endure a 14-day experiment.
It dramatically lowers the barrier to entry. But biologically, within the context of the specific LCHF framework, 2 weeks is highly strategic.
The creator makes some incredibly bold promises about what happens on day 15.
Because 14 days of suppressed insulin and plummeted systemic inflammation is just long enough to force a profound, undeniable physiological shift.
The text asserts that within this window, the overproduction of crude oil will halt so completely that you will physically feel a difference in the tactile texture of your own face.
You'll wash your face in the morning, and the bumpy, inflamed, painful, cystic landscape will have begun to flatten and smooth out.
And for the dandruff sufferers, it promises the ultimate victory. The ability to confidently put on a black t-shirt or a dark sweater without a snowfall of dead skin announcing itself on your shoulders.
It is promising rapid, visible, undeniable proof of concept. It's basically daring the viewer to prove them wrong.
It's an incredibly confident close to a deeply subversive piece of media.
We've traversed an immense amount of conceptual territory today.
We really have. We started by examining the sheer frustration of the superficial approach, the uselessness of painting over the moldy wall with expensive chemicals.
We then traveled deep into the metabolic engine room, where we watched innocent-looking liquid sugars trigger a massive panicked cascade of insulin and IGF-1.
Which brought us back up to the microscopic geography of the pore, where we witnessed a literal thriving ecosystem of bacteria and yeast gorging themselves on hormone-induced crude oil.
Lighting the inflammatory fires of acne and dandruff.
And finally, we arrived at the creator's radical, entirely counterintuitive prescription.
Bypassing the pharmacy entirely, utilizing the dense bioavailable nutrients of meat, butter, and eggs to force the body back into a state of hormonal peace.
Starving the microbes and rebuilding the skin's architecture from the inside out.
Whether you think this creator is a visionary or a quack, you have to admit it is a brilliantly constructed, comprehensive alternative theory of human dermatology.
It truly is. It forces a complete reassessment of causality.
And to you, our listener, this is exactly why we love unpacking texts like this.
Again, we are not advising you to change your diet today. But this deep dive achieves something vital. It forces us to fundamentally interrogate how we perceive our own biology.
It challenges us to stop obsessing over the superficial, visible mold on the wall.
And demands that we investigate the dark, internal plumbing.
It asks us to respect the body as a single, infinitely complex, interconnected ecosystem, rather than a collection of isolated parts that can be spot-treated with a cream.
And if we take the foundational philosophy of this video seriously, if we accept its premise, it leaves us with a truly fascinating, somewhat haunting question to mull over.
Let's hear it.
If this framework is accurate, if our skin and our scalp are not actually rebelling against us, but are simply acting as highly accurate, real-time monitors reflecting the silent health of our internal metabolic systems and the biological appropriateness of our modern environment.
What other minor, everyday physical annoyances are we completely misinterpreting?
Think of all the subtle ailments we passively accept as just having bad genetics or dismiss as simply getting older.
The afternoon brain fog, the subtle joint aches, the chronic fatigue, the digestive bloat.
If a cystic pimple is just the body desperately crying out for a different metabolic fuel, what else might actually be our internal systems sounding a blaring alarm that we are feeling at the wrong raw materials?
Well, we just keep trying to paint over the symptoms.
That is the perfect unsettling question to leave you with. Are we spending our entire lives frantically treating the symptoms while totally ignoring the system?
It really makes you wonder.
The next time you look in the mirror or the next time you feel something off in your body, are you just going to look for a quick external fix? Or are you finally ready to figure out who left the sprinkler running inside the house?